Dr. Steele, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Medical Studies at Baylor, where I direct a multidisciplinary research program on the health of Gulf War veterans with scientists from across the country. I've also served on several federal committees that plan and advise government agencies on Gulf War research, including the Research Advisory Committee on Gulf War Veterans Illnesses, which we commonly call the RAC. I've been asked to testify on the work of federal agencies in addressing Gulf War illness. By this, we mean the serious, often disabling symptom complex resulting from military service in the 1991 Gulf War. I want to be clear, Gulf War illness refers to a characteristic profile of symptoms: persistent cognitive and neurological problems, widespread pain, respiratory and other concurrent symptoms that are not explained by established medical or psychiatric diagnoses. In recent years, the government has made progress understanding Gulf War illness, but there remain serious problems on a number of fronts at VA, including the need for adequate health care for Gulf War veterans. 22 years after the war, we know Gulf War illness is not a stress-induced or psychiatric disorder. Rates of PTSD, for example, were much lower in the 1991 Gulf War veterans than in veterans from other wars. And studies consistently show that Gulf War illness is not due to war trauma or serving in combat. Rather, studies identify links with a number of hazardous exposures during the war. And there is no disagreement among scientists working in this area that Gulf War illness is a real and serious problem, affecting 25 to 33% of the nearly 700,000 veterans who served in that war. Further, few veterans have recovered in the 22 years since the war, unfortunately. This is an incredibly important time for Gulf War illness research. Scientific advances have provided important insights into this problem, its causes, and the biological processes that drive veterans' symptoms. At the same time, results are beginning to come in from treatment studies that show benefits for veterans with Gulf War illness, with more treatment research in the pipeline and more results expected in the near term. After so many years of waiting, there is finally some hope for Gulf War veterans. Hope that they will have answers that are long overdue, and hope that treatments can be found that meaningfully improve their health and their lives. Those of us most involved in this research believe, based on recent progress, that these successes are within sight. But I regret to say that in some sectors within VA, there appears to have been backward movement, with actions that seem intended to ignore the science and minimize this condition as a problem. Fundamentally, we have a situation where two federal agencies sponsor very different scientific programs, both ostensibly to address Gulf War health issues. DoD's Gulf War Illness Research Program is managed by the Office of Congressionally Directed Medical Research Programs, or CDMRP. This office has made great strides in a short time, with about $34 million in funding over 5 years between 2006 and 2011. This program began in 2006 by defining a mission, establishing priorities, and enlisting the input and guidance of experts in the field and veteran stakeholders. This mission-oriented approach has yielded impressive progress, and the proof is in the results. The highest priority research for Gulf War illness are studies to identify effective treatments. Of the 50 projects approved for CDMRP funding between 2006 and 2011, 18 are treatment-related, 11 clinical studies to assess treatments for ill veterans, and additional research on treatments in animal models of Gulf War illness, a very impressive record. In contrast to DoD's mission-oriented approach, VA has not managed an effective program that achieves targeted priorities for Gulf War veterans. Research programs at VA often run counter to the advice of scientific experts. The proof, again, is in the results. VA has reported spending over $120 million for Gulf War research over the 10 years between 2002 and 2011. This includes a total of just 5 human and animal projects related to treatment for Gulf War illness, 2 focused on stress reduction. So what happened? The devil is often in the details, of course, but there are 2 overarching themes. First, VA has been slow to clearly and accurately acknowledge the Gulf War illness problem. VA continues to provide mixed signals and vague or inaccurate representations concerning the reality and the nature of Gulf War illness. This generic representation of the Gulf War illness problem as a constellation of disparate symptoms that overlap considerably with psychiatric disorders provided the basis for the recent IOM report on treatments, which others on the panel will be talking about. Unfortunately, the misrepresentation of Gulf War illness by VA was amplified in this report, but we'll hear more about that later. There are many examples, large and small, of VA minimizing the Gulf War illness problem. It is unbelievable, for example, that VA's current national study of Gulf War veterans, conducted in 2013, does not even assess Gulf War illness symptoms. This is the largest study of 1991 Gulf War veterans in the U.S. and targets 30,000 veterans. It includes scores of questions in many areas like psychological stress, substance abuse, and alternative medicine, but not the basic symptoms needed to define Gulf War illness by any case definition. This is a wasteful and inexcusable missed opportunity at best, and something akin to scientific malpractice at worst. Further, VA has never established an effective research program to address priority Gulf War health issues. There are two main reasons that I can talk about here, although many countless examples might be provided. First, VA's program has been scientifically ineffective. Despite strong urging from scientific experts, VA did not begin the process of developing a strategic plan for Gulf War research until 20 years after the war. A comprehensive process was finally undertaken in 2011 to develop such a plan with non-government experts and stakeholders from multiple institutions and offices, 9 groups of at least 6 members each, working over many months to craft and review the plan. The draft plan was largely approved by 2 expert committees early in 2012, but in the next several months, the plan was extensively changed by VA internal editors who removed references to Gulf War illness and substantially altered the program developed to define and treat this problem. The Federal Research Advisory Committee, on which I serve, had long urged VA to develop a plan of this type. But last June, the RAC withdrew its support of the plan and reported to the Secretary that, under current circumstances, the committee had no confidence in VA's ability to develop an effective Gulf War research program. And just one final point, briefly. The other major issue related to VA's Gulf War research program relates to research funding. The RAC was charged by Congress to review all federal research programs that address Gulf War health issues. Our committee staff review of Gulf War research expenditures each year invariably finds that a large portion of VA-identified Gulf War studies would not be considered Gulf War research by any other government or non-government program. This is not a trivial problem. In many years, 60% or more of the millions of dollars identified for Gulf War research is actually used for other types of research, with no link in any important respect to 1991 Gulf War veterans. There are far too many examples to identify here, but they include high-dollar research items, like the $10 million used to fund a post-mortem brain tissue bank identified as the Gulf War Biorepository Trust. In reality, this program is a brain bank for veterans with ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease. Despite its name and the $10 million in Gulf War funding used for this program, it neither targets nor studies Gulf War veterans in any important way. As of 2010, only one of the 60 contributors to this brain bank was a Gulf War veteran. So, as always, the proof is in the results. Together, VA's poor representation of the Gulf War illness problem and failure to apply current scientific knowledge to develop a focused, state-of-the-art research program have led to relatively little in the way of tangible benefits for ill veterans. From my perspective as a scientist who has worked in this area for many years, it is time to get this right. And certainly the many thousands of veterans who have suffered with Gulf War illness for more than 20 years would say it is long past time. Thank you.